When I was 18, I emailed a board game designer to ask how I could also become a board game designer one day. I never heard back from that person, and now that I am a board game designer, I want to be there for you to answer any questions you might have about board game design. That is the reason I started this channel. I want to help other designers and share what I've learned now that I've done this for a while. That's also why I offer one-on-one sessions that anyone can book to speak with me directly and ask any questions you might have about board game design. If you want to book a meeting with me, just click on the link right here or in the description below. I really don't like gatekeeping, and I want information about board game design to be as accessible as possible. I've met with quite a few designers since offering these one-on-one sessions, and I've noticed that there are certain questions that seem to come up over and over again. So I thought I would make this video to answer those questions in case you had them as well. Be sure to watch until the end for the question I get asked the most by far. So let's start with, how many times do I have to playtest a game before it is done? Of course, there is no magic number of playtests you need to run to then be done with playtesting your game. Each game is different, but here's what you can look for in your playtest to tell if your game is close to being done enough to start pitching it to publishers or start working on your crowdfunding campaign if you plan on self-publishing. The playtesters spend the majority of their time during feedback talking about how much they enjoyed it or asking to play it again rather than rattling off a whole list of things they didn't like. Or when you playtest the game, you find that you lose yourself in it and are just enjoying playing the game rather than seeing a bunch of things that are broken or don't work. And if the changes you are making are small tweaks rather than major overhauls. If you're only making minor changes like trying to balance out the cost of things or making sure player powers are equally strong, then I'd say you are in the final stages of the design. And now for another question I get asked a lot. What do you think of first, theme or mechanics? I find this question interesting because I get asked this a lot and I just don't really think about it. I think about designing games. I don't really think about how I thought about designing a game. It's similar to the question, how'd you come up with this idea? So now I consciously try to observe my own thoughts so I can answer that question that I know I will be asked. So not only do us designers have to think of game ideas, we have to think about how we think about game ideas. I guess I just don't really see the importance of the question because why does it really matter? So for me, again, each game is different. But in general, when I think of a new game idea, I think about both the theme and the core mechanic at the same time. Or if it's a party game, then there usually isn't much of a theme and it's purely mechanics. Here are some examples of my games and what I thought of first as far as I can remember. For Hold That Face, Act Fast, and Blob Party, my 3 published party games, they don't have themes, they are mechanics forward designs, so I thought of the mechanics first. For Courier City, about bike couriers completing deliveries around town, I thought of both the theme and the core mechanic from the start. It would obviously be a pick up and deliver game. I also thought about having some sort of drafting system for players to take more order cards. These mechanics just seemed to naturally go with the theme and made sense to me. And then when I was designing a game about the Three Musketeers, I was given that theme from my co-designer at the request of a publisher, and so I was given the theme first. I then read the book and watched all the movies and TV shows I could find, and the mechanics came up out of that research. The struggle of power and control between the king and cardinal was at the center of it, as well as a sense of adventure. So the theme fed into the mechanics of a sandboxy type of environment, meaning players had the freedom to ride around France on their horses to perform different actions. I found the rules I wrote for this game from a few years ago, and here's the overview. In Musketeers Dream of Vengeance, players assume the roles of iconic characters from the Three Musketeers, Alexandre Dumas' classic adventure novel. In the game, as in the novel, things are more gray than black or white, good or bad, royalist or cardinalist. Loyalties will waver, objectives will change, and honor will be put to the test. Players will duel and scheme their way around France and the bustling hub of Paris, completing or thwarting plots that benefit the king, or the cardinal, or themselves. Players want to be on the right side of power at the end of the game, and also complete their secret objective to win. That sounds pretty cool, right? I thought it was a cool game, but I guess the publisher didn't, and they dropped the project. If anyone wants to revive that game, get in touch. Moving on to the next question I get asked a lot. What is the difference between a designer and a developer? 2 days ago, I was finally able to share a project I have been working on for the past 2 years. Chronicles of Light, Darkness Falls, published by Ravensburger. I can't say more than what was in the press release, so I'll share an article that was written about it on the BNN website. The aim of this new offering is to bring together role-playing, storytelling, and cooperation to create an immersive adventure. The game seeks to bring friends and families together for a shared gaming experience. With a modular board design, players can look forward to a new adventure with each play, as they encounter familiar items, characters, and creatures from the Disney and Pixar universes. I'll link to the full article below if you want to read more. And I'll also link to the Chronicles of Light game page on BoardGameGeek if you want to like it. That will really help generate buzz about the game. I'm working on the design diary for this game and will hopefully be able to share more details soon. But I bring all of this up because this was the first time I worked very closely with a developer. So I designed the game, but Shannon Lyon at Ravensburger developed the game. So what does that mean? Basically, it means the designer comes up with the core mechanics and gameplay, and the developer helps shape the game, keeping the target market at the forefront of their mind. The designer might want to add more complexity to the game, but the developer would rein them in if that would make it too difficult for the target audience of the game. Most of the time, the designer will fully playtest their game and then pitch it to publishers who usually have a developer on their team who will help polish the last 10% of the game and make it appropriate for their target market. Other times, the publisher might put out a call for ideas for a specific game, then designers will send in their proposals and the publisher picks their favorite. Then the developer with that publisher will be involved from the beginning of the design process rather than only at the end. But the roles usually stay the same. A game designer comes up with the core mechanics and usually the theme, and the developer helps polish the game to get it ready for market. And a note that for video games, the roles are slightly different. Video game designers come up with the mechanics and gameplay, and video game developers bring those ideas to life through code. Now let's move on to the next question I get asked often. How does publishing work? Do you sell your game idea to the publisher? Let's start with the first question. So I am a game designer, not a publisher. I design games and then pitch those games to publishers in the hopes that one of them will want to publish it. Other designers self-publish, which I'll talk about in a minute. For me, if a publisher wants to publish my game, then they send me a contract to license my game, not buy my game. So you don't sell your game to the publisher, you license it and can always get the rights back after a certain amount of time, which should be included in the contract. I would review the licensing agreement and negotiate any changes, sign, and return to them. You should expect to receive an advance of between $1,000 to $5,000, which you should receive upon signing the contract. In the contract, it will outline your royalty percentage, which is usually between 5%, and I've heard it can go as high as 8%, but that's pretty rare. It could also be lower than 5% if the game features a popular brand like Harry Potter or something like that. This percentage is on the wholesale unit price of the game, not the retail price. So if your game is sold by the publisher to retailers for $10 per unit, you would get 5% or whatever your royalty percentage is of that $10, so 50 cents per unit sold. After signing with the publisher, they then deal with the art for the game, they might change the name of your game, rewrite your rules, redo the graphic design, and so on. They shouldn't make any changes to your gameplay without speaking to you first, but any aesthetic changes are completely up to them. They will then organize the manufacturing, shipping, and distribution of the game. They will usually have to pitch the game to retailers to try to get it on their shelves, but some of the bigger companies have deals with retailers and can get their games in right away. After the game is released, which could take 1 to 2 years, you then should receive quarterly reports showing how many units sold in that quarter and how much money you earned in royalties. But you will have to recoup the advance you already received. Any royalties earned beyond your advance would then be sent to you by check or wire transfer. Now, the other path you could choose is to self-publish. So you would be both the designer and the publisher. You would have full creative control over your game and can keep all of the profits earned, but you would now have to oversee and pay for all of the art, graphic design, manufacturing, shipping, and distribution. Of course, many people set up crowdfunding campaigns like Kickstarter to help cover these costs. If you want to learn more about how you could self-publish your game, definitely check out Jamie Stegmaier's book, A Crowdfunder's Strategy Guide, as well as his blog all about crowdfunding, which I'll link to in the description of the video. Speaking of publishing, I get asked the next question quite often. Can you help me get my game published? The short answer is no. But I have made many videos like this one as a free resource for you to help you get your game published if that's what you want. But I'm not an agent. There aren't really agents in the board game industry like there are for writers, so you will have to pitch your own games. I would suggest you specifically watch my videos, how to pitch your board game to publishers and what board game publishers want, to learn more about how you can get your game published. And sign up to my weekly newsletter where I include any upcoming speed pitch events that I know of. I'll include a link to that in the description as well. And now, moving on to the last question that I get asked more than any of the others. Should I copyright my game? What if someone steals my idea? I completely understand this fear. This is one of the main reasons I only playtested my games with my friends and family for so long. I was worried that if a stranger played my game, they would see how brilliant and unique and perfect it was and want to steal it and make millions off of my idea. The reality is that us designers are usually quite biased when it comes to our games, and I can assure you that while you might think you have invented the best game to ever exist, not many other people will share that opinion. Of course, there are always exceptions, and yes, you may have invented the next Catan. But in general, designers, especially new designers, tend to put their game ideas on a pedestal and think there are hordes of people waiting in the shadows to steal it from them. And that just isn't the case. And yes, there are always bad actors. Just Google Charles Darrow to learn how he claimed to have invented the game Monopoly, while the true inventor was Elizabeth Maggie, one of the first modern board game designers. And the thing is, she had patents for the game and it was still stolen. I want to make it clear that I am not a lawyer and this is not legal advice. So let's see what a lawyer has to say about it. Here's what lawyer Zachary Stribek, who specializes in the board game and video game industries, says on his blog. What does a copyright protect in a board game? A copyright protects the original expression of an idea, not the idea itself. In the case of a board game, this means that the copyright would protect the specific elements of the game, such as the artwork, game rules, and game components. However, it would not protect the underlying game mechanics or the idea of the game itself. He goes on to say that if you do want to sue someone for copyright infringement, you must register your game with the US Copyright Office if you're in the US, which costs a fee and takes months to a year to process. And then, if you do take someone to court because they made a copy of your game, you likely won't win because, again, a game idea cannot be copyrighted. Only the expression of the idea can be copyrighted. While it is unfortunate that board game designers might not have the same protections as writers, for example, this is the reality and we have to work within it. And so, based on my experience, I don't spend time or money trying to copyright my ideas. If someone does steal my idea, I'll be sure to never interact with that person again and be sure to warn my social networks about the copycat. And then either continue on with the idea or move on to another idea. Because the thing is, new designers usually have come up with one idea and they think it's the best idea they will ever have and need to protect it at all costs. But designers come up with new game ideas constantly, and so you will have an endless supply of ideas to pull from if someone unfortunately copies one of your games. And as far as concern over playtesting your games with strangers, the benefit of playtesting your games with as many people as possible far outweighs the risk that one of those people steals your idea and actually does something with it. So the three things I want to emphasize for designers. Most people aren't looking to steal other designers' ideas. And you likely have an inflated view of your game if it's your first one and you think it's the greatest game ever invented. It probably isn't, and that's okay. You have many game ideas inside of you. And game mechanics can't be protected by copyright law anyway, so don't worry about it. Again, this is not legal advice. All right, there you have it. My answers to the top questions I get asked the most. Hopefully this was helpful for you. If it was, I hope you consider liking and subscribing. As always, I want to thank my awesome members. Thank you so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. You can click on the join button below if you want to join my membership program, which will give you access to weekly playtesting sessions, our members only Discord channel, and many other perks. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to follow me on social media at Pam Walls Game Design, and I'll see you in the next video.